Hello, dear friends. Again, greetings from down under. As I promised, today we will talk a little bit about my journal trails of discovery. It can be also about self-discovery, mainly about self-discovery. I apologize that it is pretty late in January that I'm making this video. It was due to some back problems that I've encountered, and also our little dog Milo had some health problems which looked quite serious at the beginning. So but all is good now, and he's recovering. So I thought it's a Sunday, beautiful Sunday afternoon. It's not very windy, so I decided to make that little video. So here in the beginning you will see my talking head, but later on there will be photographs, videos and so on. Today we also went to the beach and it was beautiful, so I'll just put a very short few second shots of our walk and with our dogs. And we'll talk about, from the journal Trails of Discovery, today's topic will be connectedness, what connectedness means to me. Hopefully she will talk to my daughter. And I would also then like to invite you to share in your comments, if you like, what connectedness means to you. This journal started pretty much a little bit into my therapy with horses and clients. That was like years later that I created this journal. It's usually made of photographs, a short story under the photograph, and then a bit of little space for reflection. So it is discovery or self-discovery with the help of horses, away from horses, because obviously you can't be here with our horses who are grazing peacefully in the paddock. How it came about, it's very windy, so I think it will be blowing into the mic. How it came about that I actually started equine assisted therapy was that, yes, as a therapist of adults and children who suffer trauma, I was also very interested always in whales, dolphins, the ocean, cetaceans in general. But obviously you can't be on a daily basis with whales, dolphins and cetaceans in general. But my friend then told me, well, why don't you try to do something with horses? By then we had our first mare, Rain, who is actually coincidentally going to be on the photo here in the video. And initially we bought Rain when my daughter was about 8 years old, and we had all these plans that we will riding, we will ride her, and we will be riding into the sunset, and it will be all romantic and very beautiful, and we'll also create this beautiful connection between each other and the horse and so on. Well, these plans and expectations and hopes gradually dwindled down, and they were getting lower and lower, until I had to call an excavator to actually find their remnants somewhere very deep down in the midst of the earth. So it came about that whenever we turned up with the saddle and with the bridle, Rain hightailed across the paddock, didn't want to see us, didn't want anything to do with us. And we started thinking, well, hold on, this is probably not about the horse trying to be difficult. This is probably about us, how we are approaching the horse, what we're doing, our behavioral patterns, our communication, non-verbal communication towards the horse, and our time with the horse, and so on. So we started that sort of self-work and self-discovery about where we might, be going wrong by rain, and where we could change things and get better at things and at our connectedness to rain. And we learned a lot. Rain was a great teacher. So from then on, I also started taking our clients or visitors to visit our paddock with our horses. And soon enough, they also discovered certain patterns, whether they were thinking patterns, behavioral patterns, reactions, and so on, that they would like to maybe modify or change or work with them. And then we did our big research project with the University of Central Queensland, where it actually got all quantified and proved to be, our work proved to be very useful for our clients. So that was published, and I can put links if you want to see them. But anyway, back to Trails of Discovery. I don't want to keep this too long, not to bore the living hell out of you. So it is trails, little trails, big paths to self-discovery. So I'm inviting you on these trails, and that's enough of my talking head now. Next will be photos and a little bit of a narrative to those pictures. Okay. This journal invites you on a trail of discovery. Malika the silver mare and her friends will be your companions on the way, so enjoy the journey. The story. A woman is stroking her horse. The touch is light, barely perceived, yet she is acutely aware of her horse's silky skin, of every twitch, every tightening of its muscles. The mare stands still, enjoying the connection. Skin on skin, mind to mind, heart to heart, a silent communion takes place. Reflection. Connectedness occurs in many forms. One can feel connected to a place, a book, by a common thought or memory, or by a smile shared with a stranger. Connectedness can be a long-term event that survives time and distance, or fleeting like the touch of a butterfly's wing. While it lasts, it's the closest to perfection. Personally, I get connected the best way in nature. So on this photo you see Mackenzie Falls, where we walked down some stairs about 900 meters down to come to the falls. There were a lot of people there. However, the place was completely silent, and all you could hear is the sound of the water hitting the rock. Another form of connection is a silent walk through the woods with a loved person or a companion or a friend, where words are just a unnecessary burden. Connecting in nature is not always comfortable, or some connections are not always comfortable, or connectedness. In nature, we feel the heat of a summer steamy day,
We can feel the cold of a winter day in Northern Europe, for example. Um, the nip of the wind on our skin, the uneven ground under our feet. And that is part of connectedness. It doesn't come for free. True connectedness happens without expectation. When I look into my beloved horse's eye, I get also connected. And here is Dr. Miriam Rose Ungunmerr Bowman, and she is from the Northern Territory. She's a Aboriginal person from the Ungunmerr language group. Dr. Miriam Rose speaks about Dadirri, and I'll put the link to her video in the information below. She says, "To know me is to breathe with me. To breathe with me is to listen deeply. To listen deeply is to connect. It's the sound of deep calling to deep. Dadirri, the deep inner spring inside us. We call on it and it calls on us." And coincidentally, the Czech philosopher Anna Hogenová speaks about human being but a conversation with our deep inner spring. Let's call it the soul. This inner spring is basically without any boundaries. It can absorb and it can take in and perceive and feel without limits. So again, it's interesting that these two ladies who have never met, never seen each other, never spoken, speak about the same thing, the deep inner spring in us that sustains us with its life-giving nourishment. Anna Hogenová is sourcing her wisdom from the ancient Greek philosophers, and basically her philosophy meets here with the wisdom of the ancient Aboriginal people here in Australia. So if we talk about a conversation that doesn't have to happen with words, it just happens on a much deeper level. Another form of connectedness is the one that my daughter will now speak about, and that is connectedness based off emotion, understanding, and empathy. She works with the turtles here at Monrepo at the turtle nesting ground, and she will just share with us her way how she connected with the turtles.
I started working at Monrepo because I was interested in turtles. I didn't know much about them. I only ever saw them when I was snorkeling or, out diving or things like that. And I always felt like they were super peaceful, relaxed creatures that were just taking life real easy and enjoying the moment and everything like that. So I felt connected somewhat through those experiences by enjoying the moments with them when I would be diving or snorkeling with them. But when I started working with them at Monrepo, I sort of found that I learned more about their story, their life, the things that they face every day. And at the start I just looked at the turtles and was like, wow, they're amazing creatures. I admired them for their appearance and things like that. And like as time went on and I learned more about them, I realized that it's not just about how they appear to us and their behaviors then and there, but their whole life journey is just something to be admired, and it's inspiring in itself. And I started to develop a real emotional connection to them. So at the start, I was just working more so with the nesting turtles and learning about how they, from when they were hatchlings, they were born at Mon Repos, and they make their way almost immediately to the East Australian Current. I think that's it. And then they go towards South America to Peru, and that's a huge journey. And as hatchlings, they've only got about 5 days, I think, of sustenance from the yolk, and then they have to feed on their own and also try and survive. So only 1 in 1,000 hatchlings survives. So every turtle we see is literally 1 in 1,000. But again, I knew that, and it was like, oh, that's amazing and everything like that. And then, you see them when they come back. So they come back after 30 years, the females come and nest. And, after 30 years, they're finally stepping on sand for the first time since they were hatchlings, because they don't usually go to the sand. And they make their way up, and they, somehow know how to dig the nest, and no one taught them how to do any of this stuff. They just make their way up all alone, do a very precise and step-by-step process of nesting, and they're committed to it. And they, in a laying season, a turtle may come up to nest 4 or 5 times, with 2-week periods in between each nesting time. So not only have they migrated all the way from Peru, but they're staying in these waters, going up, nesting once every 2 weeks for about five different times, and they don't eat at all during that period. They have nothing to eat, so because they have to produce the eggs, and there's no more room. So in their body cavity, because their shell encloses them quite hard, so they can only fit a certain amount of space in there. Anyway, so and that's a huge thing in itself. Number one, to migrate all the way home. They nest. They don't eat, and then they make their way back. And by that point, by the end of the nesting period for them, they're pretty skinny, and they just don't give up. Like, they have all these adversities in front of them. They're constantly at threat, and they know they're at threat because, obviously if they see a shark, they know that's a danger, or if they see, whatever predator, or there's so many vessels going along that strike them. There's the trawlers that pick them up on their big nets and drown them. There's global warming, there's plenty of stuff, there's pollution that's killing off their food supplies, so they have to face so much. Anyway, so and that's one thing. And as I went on, continuing with the project, and it started to go to hatchling season, and you see the little hatchlings emerge, and they're these tiny little things. Like an adult loggerhead can be, its shell can be about 1 meter long. These hatchlings are like, barely the size of the palm of your hand. They're so tiny, and they're so fragile, and they're so vulnerable. And you see them emerge, and they are just running for their lives to the ocean, and that's where it all begins, you know, as these vulnerable little tiny things with no one to look after them. Their mum's gone, and they have to, you know, imprint their location in their brain so that they can eventually find their way back to Mon Repos. But yeah, they're just on their own. That's it, you know, and maybe none of them survive. Maybe, you know, if it's only 1 in 1,000 out of, I don't know, 5 nests, maybe not even one will survive. Maybe 1 in 10 nests would survive. It's really such small odds for them to actually make it to adulthood. And it all kind of clicked in that moment when I got to see the whole life cycle of these animals. And from being these vulnerable little hatchlings to these very well established mother turtles that come up, and you can see they've weathered so much adversity, and that was the moment that I really felt like a emotional connection to them, because I just thought, I finally feel like I'm beginning to understand them, you know. I don't, of course I don't understand them properly, but I felt connected to, this is not some cute animal that is like sweet and kind and blah blah blah, you know. They'll bite your finger off if you put it in their mouth. Like they don't they don't really, you know, they're not soft and cuddly. They're weathered animals that have seen things that we can't even imagine. And yeah, so for me, that was when I started building that empathy to actually understanding, when this turtle's coming up, oh my goodness, what has she seen? What's her life been like, you know? And just sitting with her while she's nesting, and she doesn't care, like, you know, what's happening around her by the point of her laying her eggs. She's so committed to it. Even when, you know, you see turtles coming up and they've got, you know, maybe only 1 back flipper, and that makes such a difference in their ability to nest. But they don't come up and say, oh, I've only got 1 back flipper, I don't want to do this, and then they just go back. You know, they commit, and they will dig with that 1 back flipper, and they will still nest and go through all of that despite having such a disadvantage. So it's, for me, connectedness in that aspect is the ability to see something, some sort of an organism, whether it's human or even some sort of a microscopic virus or whatever it is, to just appreciate it and try and understand it for what it is, without, I guess, even attaching like human ideas to it. Like, you know, when it comes to animals, when I don't know, when people attach like human ideas to an animal's behavior or whatever, I feel like that's not being fully connected. That's, you know, trying to understand it from a human perspective. But from me, I want to understand the animal in a unbiased way, in a really just looking at that animal or looking at that person, or and empathizing with what they have gone through, and not necessarily understanding what they're feeling in a moment, but just understanding what has their path in life been like, and appreciating whatever you can in that moment with that organism or whatever it is.
Fellow earthling.
Fellow earthling, yeah. Connectedness is not really about gaining anything. It's about, it's not a lose or gain. It's just to be there to appreciate something for what it is, whether it is good or bad. But yeah, so that's sort of my take on connectedness, and I don't know if that's how everyone feels, but definitely I feel connected more when I can feel something emotional
Yeah.
with another organism of some kind.
Thank you.
So here was Desiree's much more concrete take on her connectedness with our species, different species, with the turtle, sitting with the turtle, and when it's nesting, and following the hatchlings to the ocean and wishing them all the best on their journey. There's so much more to be said about connectedness, and I would really like to hear your take on it. So do not hesitate to add your bit in the comments. And for now, we can just soar with the eagles. Let our spirit soar on the wings of the eagles. Be connected to the eagles and enjoy the flight. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.